Nutting fired Derek Shelton, he made clear and stated explicitly that the focus, the franchise, was going to remain on 2025. He didn't want to talk about anything related to the future beyond this season. Well, you'll never guess who talked about the future beyond this season. Good morning to you. Good Monday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Pirates. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or hockey, I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Penguins in the same place that you found this. Pirates 2, Twins 1 yesterday in Minneapolis. That ended an 8-game losing streak, salvaged one win out of the 9-game trip through Seattle, Kansas City, and Minneapolis. Mitch Keller pitched really well again. More good bullpen work from Caleb Ferguson, Dennis Santana, and David Bednar. Bednar having like the comeback of a lifetime just within the season. The resurgent Tommy Pham hit a 421-foot homer in the second inning, and the Pirates broke a 1-1 tie in the ninth with just one of the cheesiest runs ever. The Minnesota infield handed the game to them. And that left your ball club at 39-58 heading into the All-Star break. I saved you the math. That's a 65-win pace. One that in the sixth year of any general manager's tenure anywhere except Pittsburgh would have gotten you fired quite some time ago. As it is, Ben Cherington remains the GM, and in fact, he was allowed to conduct the team's MLB draft process from PNC Park last night. And earlier in the day, when normally he would give up the role on his weekly radio program to one of his surrogates, but that seems to have become something of a touchy subject within that building, so he went and did the show on the day that he's preparing for the draft. And lo and behold, he brought up the year 2026, which according to the Gregorian calendar and the Julian calendar and all other calendars follows the year 2025, which flies completely in the face of Nutting's own vocal focus for this baseball organization. I quote to you directly from Cherington on his team-produced radio show when he was asked about the trade deadline that comes at the end of the month. Quote, "Our focus is short-term. By short-term, I don't necessarily mean August of 2025. Our focus is going to be, how do we get this thing on track and be better in 2026, win more games in 2026? That's our focus in all of our decision-making. It doesn't mean we wouldn't trade a player for a prospect, just means that if we do that, in our mind, it's a way to add value to the organization that we can somehow use to build back toward a better team in 2026. There were several other references to the year 2026. I'm going to go out on a crazy limb here and suggest to you that that wasn't an accident, considering I've never heard him speak that year before, certainly not in a context that applies to the general manager's planning. This, my friends, from what I have heard, is how this guy rolls, meaning he finds ways to keep Nutting at bay. If you want to call that playing him, go nuts. If you want to call that being oblivious to his reality, go equally nuts. My understanding is that he won't be around beyond the end of this season. But when you're this richly confident that you are right and everybody else is wrong, and or you're this deeply deluded, these are the kinds of things that you try because you can't even fathom not having this job because you're so brilliant. Everything you've touched has turned to gold except for that stuff that hasn't, and that's just bad luck, which will automatically turn itself around at some point. This is what you do. This is a pattern that's been in place for a long time when it comes to embattled general managers in any sport. When Dave Littlefield had a really good idea that Nutting was going to fire him, he started saying things on his show that he'd never said before that actually weren't really very much like him. For example, bragging about the Freddie Sanchez trade, which incidentally was a very good trade. It's just not the kind of thing that Dave would have brought up, and he did. The next thing you know, Dave was talking about next year and our plans for next year. Neil Huntington didn't do quite as much of this, but there were signs of it. And this is what it looks like, because what else, if you think about it, are you going to say? Are you going to suggest to anybody that there's something to salvage from 2025? No, but there's a reason that Nutting said he didn't want to take his eye off 2025, that he wanted to see the team improve, show stronger signs, and all this other stuff that, as we could plainly see over this past road trip, aren't going to happen, if only because the general manager has decided to not partake in this, meaning he's done nothing to lift a pinky finger to help the 2025 team. Even after he was publicly admonished by the owner of the franchise to do so. I can't even wrap my head around this stuff anymore. So what's he do instead? Well, he does the one thing that he's always been comfortable with, which is kicking the can down the road. He sees himself as some sort of master organization builder. He's anything but. That's been proven. So what happens when his back is against the wall at the Pittsburgh level and the owner says, I need this to be fixed at the Pittsburgh level and I need it to be fixed this year? His brain just goes kablooey. He doesn't know what to do with it. This guy was allowed to run the draft last night. This guy, as we're sitting here, is going to be allowed to manage the team through the upcoming trade deadline. This makes my own brain go kablooey when we come back. J1Q. If you're looking for a great dining experience, look no further than North Shore Tavern. Located directly across Federal Street from PNC Park, next door to Mike's Beer Bar, North Shore Tavern is Pittsburgh's home for steak on a stone. Enjoy your steak finished on a hot lava stone in front of you, where you ensure each piece is cooked to exactly your liking. Or try their rotating selection of entrees, hot sandwiches, salads, and burgers, all while enjoying the ambiance dedicated to the great players and history of the Pittsburgh Pirates all around you. Come see why everyone's talking about North Shore Tavern and steak on a stone.
It's Gun Storage Check Week. Help prevent unwanted access to your firearms. No one wants their unsecured gun to be used in an accident, a suicide, or a crime. Use lockboxes, safes, and locks to secure your firearms. Learn more at gunstoragecheck.org. That's gunstoragecheck.org. Brought to you by NSSF, the Firearm Industry Trade Association.
Today's J1Q comes from Sean, who says, is the Pirates' pick of a high school pitcher with the kind of upside that Sean Hernandez possesses yet another sign that Ben Cherington is a dead man walking? I feel like someone who might still have some rope left to pull would go for the safest, quickest to the majors college bat to salvage his job. Sean, you're going to make me invoke Dave Littlefield twice in the same show, but Littlefield infamously drafted Danny Moskos instead of Matt Wieters back in 2007, roundly and correctly panned as a pick by the entire baseball world. Doubly so when Littlefield stood in front of everyone and confessed that Moskos, who'd been a starting pitcher primarily at Clemson, was going to be a relief pitcher for the Pirates, and the idea was just to get him to Pittsburgh faster. Littlefield wasn't even attempting to apologize for it. He was just saying, this is where we are, where I am. I don't have time to be waiting around for somebody. I have a couple of things to say about this. One of them is that Hernandez seems like a quality pick. I say seems like because there are draft prospect rankings that are more reliable in baseball than they are in a lot of other sports. Hernandez was seen by more than one service as being worthy of a selection a lot higher than number 6. A second point to make here, and it's not a new one for me at all, you don't ever draft by need in baseball. You just don't do it. It makes no sense. You're taking forever, in the best case scenario, to get these players to the big leagues. It's hardly ever going to align with whatever your need happens to be in a given year. So did I roll my eyes a little bit whenever there was a high school pitcher in the first round and then another high school pitcher after that in Angel Cervantes? Yeah, I did. I'm not going to lie, but I get it. That much I get. The first kid's 19, the second kid's 17. It's just not going to matter. But is it a sign of anything to attempt to answer your actual question? Look, there are enough legitimate causes to criticize Cherington. What I don't feel the need to do is to go at him hypothetically, meaning to try to mind read. That's why even in the opening segment this morning, I threw out different possibilities for what he could be thinking. They could be right. They could all be wrong. He is currently holding the job. He does come with an unbelievable sense of confidence, if that's what you want to call it, in what it is that he does, even after it has fallen on its figurative face. He just feels like it's all going to turn around if you just give it more time. Never mind that there's already been 6 years of it. If you really pushed me for what I think might be his motivation in conducting business as usual, and by that I mean business as usual, not in the good sense, like not doing a thing to ever help this team's offense. That's business as usual, and that's what he's been doing since Shelton was fired. Not one thing. Then why would the draft approach be any different? Look, he can think or even say whatever he wants. He doesn't get to make the call as to whether or not he's the general manager after this season. Only one guy can do that, and I have a much better idea of what he's thinking these days than what the GM is thinking these days. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Pirates. We'll be back with another one of these tomorrow.